All right, we have talked about the essential wound. We have talked about the codependent bargain and the cherished saboteur, and how one fuels the other to result in stress and anxiety. And that follows you from childhood. It follows you from that first experienced moment where you didn't feel safe, and then the ensuing moments where that continued. Now, whatever the messages were from childhood, the rights and wrongs, the messages that you got where you learned that it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to talk, it wasn't safe to trust, it wasn't safe to feel. All of the material that was well covered in the addiction, or the children of alcoholics information in the mid-'80s is still very applicable. What's been added more profoundly, I think, is the fact that there is an increased anxiety and stress in our day-to-day life ever since, I think, really 9/11. It has grown, and now we have all of the economic crisis and the loss of jobs and the foreclosures and all of these survival stresses that are impounding on us in our adult life. When those commingle with anything that happened in your childhood, then it's a real difficult task to manage. I think that's one of the reasons why we are seeing so much addiction at this point in time. And to be honest, I think all of us are addicted to something, because I think all of us do not know, or few of us know, how to deal with life. And so the way that we do is we discharge that energy in our excessive behaviors. And I covered that in a couple videos back. Today what I want to move into is the first, second, and third stages of recovery. Now, we've kind of danced around that, but in the book, Life Beyond Confusion and Fear, I have to get it right side up, I really cover this in detail, and you can order this off of my website. But this was actually the birth of my whole model. I developed the material that's in this book, I developed in the mid-'80s when I was teaching a class at the College of Marin called Life Beyond Addictions. And it was actually during that time that I developed all of the concepts for the inner child work, because the first stage of recovery is basically what we dealt with a couple videos back, is just intervening in the addictive acting out. And in my model, usually that takes about, anywhere from 6 to 12 months to really get established in a very, very viable recovery program. And there's a lot of challenges between that. One of the polarizations that we're going to actually talk about tomorrow is the battle between the addict and the recovering self. And in that first stage of recovery, that is the whole intention. That's the whole task. Now, what brings people into recovery is when their acting out gets so pervasive that their life is just not able to operate. And so they hit bottom, and you can hit bottom in any one of your addictions. You can hit bottom financially by gambling. You can hit bottom financially by being an over-debtor. You can hit bottom with your chemicals. You can hit bottom with your codependency, and that's a little softer, because our bottom with that often is more of the physical ailments, like the chronic fatigue or any immune deficiencies are directly related to our emotional stress. So there's all sorts of bottoms that get people into recovery. But once you get to a place where you have admitted that you are powerless over this behavior and you need help, then the concept of the 12 steps has been primarily the most effective and successful way of dealing with that. It's not the only way, but some sort of self-help group is going to be required, because you need to be around other people who are dealing with a similar situation. If you're not going to just white knuckle it, if you're really going to establish a different lifestyle, you need to be around other people who are doing that. So that's what first stage recovery is. And this book deals with first stage recovery, which is the intervention. And the video tomorrow deals with that polarity between the recovering self and the addict. And it also talks about the need for biochemical repair. One of the programs that I worked in Minneapolis was Health Recovery Center, and that's the only intervention they did primarily was the nutritional intervention, which dealt with the biochemical impairment. And then that was just a 6-week program, and then people had to find a way to bring that new intervention. They felt a lot better, but they still needed to find that external structure. Another program that is developing in Minneapolis is the work of Lenny Guerin, who does the Soul of the Addict work. And she has a new book coming out called 7 Steps to Spiritual Sobriety. Now, what I like about Lenny's material, and it's available through the internet, and that web link will be on my website. What I love about Lenny's work, and I've attended her church and I've seen her in process, is that she has a program that really focuses not on the diseased self, although she acknowledges that in her 7 steps, but her focus is more on the empowering self and giving voice to what she calls the third voice, which in 12 steps is called the higher self. You'll hear me refer to that as the illuminated self, or the source essence, source self. So there's a lot of different terms. But the point I'm trying to make is, in that first stage of recovery, before you ever start digging into the inner child material, which is 2nd stage recovery, it's important for you to really get a solid, viable recovery program intact, so that when you begin dealing with some of the underlying issues that set you up to act out and get relief from your stress addictively, that you are not going to trigger such stress that you relapse. And that's the danger of going into the inner child work too quickly once you're in recovery. Now, the one exception for that is if your inner child stuff, if the issues that you carried into adulthood and therefore into your addiction are so pervasive that you cannot establish a viable first stage recovery program, then with great diligence and with a very supportive structure, I will work with somebody on those issues. In fact, there's a man on the radio show in May that you can, if you're listening to this later, you can come back and hear the intake session that we do with Anthony. He's in that situation. He's trying to stay sober, but because of abuse in childhood, he just cannot get it together to commit enough to that functional self. So we're going to work with it from the dual perspective. So the other dual perspective is if someone's suffering from the biochemical depression or the anxiety, that needs to be addressed as well. Now, a lot of recovering alcoholics are self-medicating. A lot of people who have trouble with their eating disorders, that's self-medication as well. The biochemistry of the addict and the biochemistry of the obese is very similar. Their ways that they choose to act out is what's different. So I just wanted to give this little intro to the 3 stages of recovery. Again, tomorrow we're going to work with stage 1 recovery, and we're going to work with balancing that addict and that recovering self and giving birth to that. The blog post is going to have a lot of information actually directly from this book. And then I'm going to go into the inner child material, and we'll look at the 7 developmental stages, and we will begin pairing the codependent bargain and the cherished saboteur with each of those developmental stages. In closing for today, I'm not going to do an EFT sequence because I don't think I have time. But what I realize that I'm really creating in this 62-day program is in very manageable chunks, not more than 10 minutes a day, I'm actually gifting basically almost a 6.5 to 7 hour workshop that you'll be able to watch on your own, and then you will have the posts that give you the manual for it. So I'm kind of excited about this. It feels good to be putting it out, and I have been getting feedback from you that it's useful. So it's a reciprocal exchange, and I want to take this moment. I'm a 3rd of the way through the 62 days, and it's exciting. It's exciting to do this. It's exciting to bring it to you. It's exciting to have to formulate it. So I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Until tomorrow.